So right now we are going to review the evening agenda. We have several board meeting minutes to approve for the past 3 board meetings, public comment as requested. In chair business, we're going over an existing formal complaint, a new complaint, receipt and assignment. We will then do an update from the interim ED recruiting task force, as well as the board members who are on the principal recruiting selection committee, and then formal communication on the collective bargaining agreement. We'll then move to discuss the parent and staff concerns of culture and management practices and have a discussion from our third-party assessment task force. We'll go to finance committee update. Within the governance committee, we need to approve bylaws and approve the school policy handbooks. Then we'll have monthly updates from the education committee and the fundraising committee. And we also, it's not on here, I just realized, we need to approve the annual report that is due to the charter school office, as well as our charter renewal, which would also require a vote to designate signatory authority to me instead of in Craig's absence. So we can handle those. I do. There's a mic here, so I should just speak louder.
We don't have external mics.
We don't have external mics. I can just speak up, because I can be pretty loud. All right, so if we can take a moment to review the minutes. Sarah sent these to all board members earlier today, or Roger sent them today, and I believe we have the corrections as well, right? The corrected version.
Yes, this version, I think the 619 one has Rick's feedback included.
All right, so these are minutes from June 19th, June 27th, and July 1st.
Sorry, where is the change from what you sent out?
So there is no change from what I sent out. I was just commenting that the change that the paper copy you have is identical. And there had been a question whether there's one sentence that Rick had added, when we were working on the minutes.
About the third-party assessment task force, just to clarify the timing of the reports. So. Okay. This one is not accurate as well. Okay. We have a motion to approve.
I have, which meeting minutes, the July,
June in order.
sorry,
June 19th.
June 9th,
Did not June?
under chair discussion,
Yep.
I would just strike the word small in the third sentence, because I would just say that it was just a drop, not necessarily a small drop.
Chair discussion. Oh. Okay.
Okay, and then, that's all I have for that one.
Melissa, what was that, the 19th?
Yeah, on the 19th.
The 19th, under chair discussion, the third line down, strike the word small.
Okay.
And then in the July 1st,
Why don't we just go through
Okay.
and, if,
go ahead.
just for
Do them one at a time?
for clarity, are you gonna
Yes.
approve each one individually?
Oh, so actually this one does not have the correct language from Rick on the third-party consultants. This one did not get added in. So the language that Rick wanted this paragraph to say is the third-party consultants that presented the bigger game on June 18th will be continuing their involvement collecting data through staff interviews during the summer. They will present data to the task force in August and to the full board in September. That's your understanding, right? of the
Yes.
timing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other changes to the to the June 19th minutes?
It's too much.
Okay, can I have a motion for those?
So moved.
I will second.
Okay, all vote to approve those with those changes? Against? Okay, motion passes unanimously. June
Just
27th,
for clarification, I can't vote yet, right?
you haven't been approved by
Okay,
just
that's why I
yet.
didn't vote, I just didn't want you to think I was ignoring it.
Yeah. The June 27th meeting minutes should be straightforward.
Motion to approve the June 17th, or June
June.
27th.
Second.
Oh, actually, sorry, it's 8 AM, not 8 PM.
That's it.
It says it opened at 8:05 AM, but it should be PM.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's.
No, this
no,
was
that
8
is
AM.
The, what's.
On the front page.
Oh, front says PM.
Oh,
Yeah,
this was an 8 AM.
yeah.
So, a motion to approve with the change,
I've changed so many times.
to the.
So it was AM?
Yes.
That was the
That
AM
was 8
meeting.
AM.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the agenda page.
On the agenda page, on
On
the
the
8
agenda
AM.
page also.
Okay.
No problem. Motion to approve with edits.
Second.
All in favor?
I had the motion.
Roger has
Melissa
the
second.
edits.
The,
All
July
right.
1st meeting?
July 1st meeting?
Three parents, right? How many parents on the principal search committee? Three parents, four teachers. So, under chair business, the second page,
Yeah,
we'll choose three parents.
it's 3 parents, 4
I
teachers.
couldn't find it.
Yes.
Yes.
And do we need to add a note that Jess would, choose the 4 teachers? Do we,
Yes, it should be
It should be
added.
in there.
I still did.
So,
Are you writing all this down?
I think what so Moses, you're saying that there should be a sentence parallel to Melissa, to your sentence, saying
Yes,
Jess Wellman as teacher representative will choose 4 teachers to serve on the principal search task force.
Okay, any other changes? I have a motion for the,
Motion to approve with edits, the July 1st meeting minutes.
need a second. You need a second.
First.
made the
I was-
motion,
I-
Jessica.
first.
second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, we're moving on to public comment. Do we have, yeah, there's, if this is the list, then no one has signed up. Would anyone else like to sign up?
My comment's gonna be brief. I know I've talked to Melissa about this a little bit too, and I know she said, Roger, you're working on it. But just the subcommittees and their groupings, a lot of people have been asking, about the subcommittees and how to be a part of the subcommittees, and also where the meeting minutes are for subcommittees and kind of the general purpose of the subcommittees. And right now, we don't have that information available on our website. So I would like to see that information, available on our website. And the only other thing is too, is sometimes when we come to these meetings, sometimes, I know we did get some information out, but sometimes it's helpful, and I know you may not want to post meeting minutes, but if there are things that you're discussing, it'd be nice if visually, that we had a visual to go by too, when the group is talking, otherwise we're not quite sure what's being discussed. So if we could do more of that transparency, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Let me attempt to answer the question regarding the task forces. So technically, the interim ED task force and the principal search committee are task forces. They are not committees of the board. and as a result, that they do not report minutes at the board level.
She's talking
Oh,
about
Talking about- she's talking about
Oh.
subcommittees.
You mean,
Like ed committee.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I was taking the question in a different way.
No, I realize that those
Yes.
are private and confidential, but can't
Yes,
disclose that.
yes, the goal of the board is to have meeting minutes published for all committees of the board on the webpage. And they've also just recently on the webpage have updated the board section with an accountability section which lists the last 3 years of financial reports and the annual report that we file with the state.
She has annual report or just annual reports?
The past annual
The
reports.
the
This
past
year's have
three,
not been
the past
counted.
3 years' annual reports are now prominently on the web, on the board subsection of the webpage under the accountability area.
So I'll just comment that, I met with, I don't know how many parents right before the meeting, and I think that, the biggest thing that I took from that is if we can get some of the subcommittee minutes out there, I think they'll have a better understanding of some of the work that the board is doing versus just what we do here, which is a lot of the voting, and not necessarily the discussion. So I would say that's probably one of our priorities after all the other priorities.
Noted. Okay, we're moving on to an update on a formal complaint that Tom and Chris are investigating.
We received a complaint in regard to inappropriate use of a credit card. That is an ongoing investigation. We have conducted interviews, as we talked about at the last meeting. We've now reviewed over 3,000 credit card transactions from the last year. There are 3 credit card transactions that the school processed over the telephone. They're all for late bus payments. And the school is now updating its policies to not accept credit card payments over the telephone. So we believe that this was an isolated incident. It was an unintentional mistake, is what we know at this point in time, but we're continuing to investigate it. And when we have finalized our investigation, we'll report out at that point in time. But that's where we're at as of right now. That's the update since the last time I reported on this.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge that we received a new complaint from a teacher at the school alleging a unhealthy work environment. And Craig and I discussed this, and we are going to initiate an investigation which will involve interviewing this teacher as well as some of the allegations associated with this. For this complaint, given the nature of the complaint and the other things we have going on, we are going to assign both Craig as chair and Roger as secretary to investigate this complaint. So from here on out until that investigation is concluded, this will be reported as, will be updated every board meeting. Let's move on then to the interim ED recruiting update. So the interim ED task force, are you prepared to make a?
Yes. Just let everyone know the task force is Jessica, Melissa, and myself. As part of the interim ED search committee, we have gone through a number of resumes. We have contacted search firms, have done interviews with leaderships, people in leadership roles to kind of see where we're heading with this interim position, what type of leaderships. We're looking for someone that, can really kind of calm the waters with, faculty and to make sure it's a really good work environment. We've conducted phone interviews. There are some candidates that we like very much that are going to the next level of the process. So we do have a number of candidates that we have found, both through the general resume. We put something out in School Spring, and we also are bringing in some people from the search firms. So we do have a kind of a wide variety of different people. And, there are a few people that we do like, and they're kind of moving to the next step. So we understand that, there's right now a really big hole in leadership right now. We want to fill that very quickly, but we want to make sure we fill it with the right person. So that's where we are right now, and we do hope to have someone in that position soon.
So what are your next steps?
Our next step, we are scheduling with one individual an interview on Monday at 10 a.m. And I have another interview scheduled with someone on Friday. And then I could have two on Friday,
We're also contacting references.
yes.
So we broke it out into different phases and screening, and first what we did as a group, we collectively looked at all of the applicants to identify possible candidates. So, we had a wide range of applicants, but really, we whittled that down to the people that we felt would be good candidates and a good fit for the school. And we sent out the outline of what we were trying to do and really have a really comprehensive screen or interview process that involved people not only on the board but also in the school. And then, Jess and I, as the representatives of the two stakeholder communities, are really trying to work on the screening and talking to the references and really getting feedback. I would say that just one of the comments from one of the parents earlier, which we can consider, is that can we reach out to people that they didn't reference? Like, would you just, can you call a school committee member that maybe they didn't identify, or a PTO member, just to say, hey, do you know this person? What do you think? I know they were in your district. So that's something, if we have availability and we can get connections, we would try to do that.
I think also one of the questions that's come up is, are we allowed to consider people who have not formally applied for the role, but people whose name has been recommended to us as, hey, this person might be available, you might want to contact this person? I don't think we've really come to an answer on that, so maybe as a...
I think that from my perspective, if we hear of a good candidate out there, we can network with them and reach out to them to see if they're interested. But ideally, we do have a good pool that are coming in.
I think you can reach out to them, but I think you have to encourage them to apply,
to
so that
apply.
everything
Yeah.
flows through
Yeah.
the process at that point in time, so.
So that, we did have some people that came through from a parent, and we had some people that came through the chair email, just the regular bot chair email, and I've redirected them to apply through School Spring.
And we are acting on these resumes very quickly. So as I said, we might get a resume in today. If that was a good fit, I actually scheduled an interview for today. One came in today. I actually contacted that person. When you were available, we scheduled the interview. So we're really doing all we can to kind of get the process moving as quickly as possible.
Can you talk about timing at this point, because we are at July 29th now?
I think what we need to determine is that if we should schedule a board meeting in a couple of weeks just to have it on schedule and meet, because I think in 2 weeks, if we don't have final candidates that we can present to the board, we need to think about putting somebody into that position.
I'm
as an
confident we
acting.
will. I'm confident we will.
Well, we can schedule.
I think we need to schedule the board
We
meeting
can
anyway.
schedule a board meeting on 48 hours notice, 2 business days notice. So I think as a board member, I'd say, I'm available anytime. I'm not on vacation to make it happen. So I think it's more when you have a candidate ready, we can meet as soon as possible after that to,
I think to Melissa's point, though, I think we do need to have a fallback
Yeah.
plan, and if two weeks
Yes.
from now, we find that the cupboard is
Mhm.
bare, then we may need to schedule a board meeting to reevaluate the approach that we're taking. So, I'd say that in, 11 days, we can figure out where we're at and determine whether we need to have another board meeting or not.
Well, we'll need to have a meeting to either meet the candidates or to assess why we don't have a final candidate. So should,
Right,
does
I
it
think
make sense to
we're gonna
schedule a
need it,
meeting?
I think we need to schedule it no matter what,
Yeah,
right? Because
whether
there
we
are
have a
things we
candidate or
have
not,
to.
we need to meet to figure out what we're doing with that situation.
I'd like to get it on the calendar for the busy, people have busy schedules.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess,
2 weeks
we,
from
we also, as a, committee, task force, we really need to narrow down, like, how many interviews until we think this is the final, person to get
Yeah.
stamped and approved.
can I make a suggestion then, that we try to schedule a board meeting 2 weeks from today?
Yeah, that's the
Yep.
Is
12th.
that the 12th,
Yep.
and to hold that?
I will be on vacation.
You will?
I will be on vacation, so I won't be on the week. But that's not.
I think we need to have it that week.
I think we need to have it that week.
I'm on vacation the whole week, so
Oh, okay.
don't schedule,
All
don't
right.
schedule around me.
If we can have somebody in here sooner, but I doubt it, because we need to have time to interview and vet the people, and also have the opportunity to vet more than, one or two candidates, so.
Yeah.
I think, 2 weeks, we should have a better read as to whether or not we need to have a secondary plan.
Okay. Chris and Scott, can you make that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
August 12th?
August 12th, we will need a quorum, so, I will have to check with the people who are not here.
When is Jessica getting on the board?
It's whenever Dees approves her,
Oh, okay,
I can make that meeting.
but she can't vote for an intermediate anyway,
okay.
so. We will,
The-
I'm gonna-
The quorum of the board is 5.
yeah, quorum's 5, so we need one more. So we'll check with Allison and Rick. 'Cause
Is Rick back?
Craig is, I don't know, we can check,
Is it gonna be the standard 6:30 time?
yeah, I would suggest 6:30. And we will check, I will check to see if, the missing board members are able to make it, specifically Allison and Rick, because I know Craig is still out.
Craig returns on the 15th.
Right, Craig is out until the 15th. And he's international, so he actually cannot easily get back, so.
Should we skip you?
Board members must attend in person.
Yeah,
There is no
we
option
cannot do
to-
remote
To
participation.
do remote participation.
We could all go to France.
Nope.
Well, no, we can't.
Nope.
Oh, right.
Well, actually, by the new bylaws, we.
By the new
we
bylaws,
must-
we can't.
We must meet in Massachusetts.
I'm gonna move on from that, just because we can come back and talk to all of these sort of together. Principal recruiting task force,
I-
update from Roger or Chris?
I'll start, and I'd like to recognize there are a couple of the parents that are in the audience that are, and one of the administrators in the audience that are members of the committee, so if there are other questions or comments, feel free to add your feedback. So the committee, it consists of 4 teachers, one department head, 2 people from the administration, and I'll put get the names into the minutes, myself and Chris O'Keefe. We've met twice so far to discuss this role. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a long ways to go because we're starting from ground zero. The committee had some recommendations and questions for the board to help us in making more progress. First, based on the progress that we've made so far, is that the task force is recommending that we appoint an interim principal, or find the mechanism that can be done, because we don't think that
An acting.
an acting principal because of the power vacuum. Second, that we look to create/provide a budget for an outside search firm to assist in the principal search. And third, that when hired, that the interim ED should also be appointed to the task force. That was the recommendations that the committee had. There were also questions for the board. One was who has the authority to appoint the acting principal. The second was, sort of related, was can the assistant principal take on the role of principal in the interim? They're related, is there a budget for hiring an outside search firm consultant? And is there a synergy that could we possibly use the same search firm for hiring the ED? And who / what process would be used to select the search firm?
So, I can add a couple of things to that. So it's a really, trying to hire number two without a number one in place is a weird place to be. And I think everybody on the committee feels that. I think that the suggestion or the request to have a search firm come and help us structure and conduct the search, because to try and do this in this odd kind of situation with such a large group, which we put together deliberately for the purposes of transparency and inclusion, but it's a big group to be looking at. You know, we actually did look at resumes and all that, but it's very. I and I think other members of the group found it kind of unwieldy to figure out where we want to go, and the whole issue of the interim, because you know, the first most important thing that even an interim executive director has to do is get principal, and if we do that for him or her, that's, you know, we were afraid setting up an untenable situation. And so that led to the discussion of what do we have to do to get somebody in some kind of acting capacity. And Mike McIntyre was helpful in trying to, you know, saying, you know, that there were, you know, provisions in some job descriptions for people to step up on temporary bases. So that to get, you know, there's a lot of things that people, because the operation is running, people know how to do what they know how to do, and so it's going forward, but there are also a lot of decisions that have to be made now, and that we need to get somebody, kind of get the doors open, and to know that we're okay for right now, so that we can then give the principal search more, the time that it deserves for us to be successful.
So we have gotten clarity that the board cannot appoint a principal. So that is in contrast to what we believed we could do. It is the interim ED who is going to need to appoint an acting principal.
Okay.
The acting, when we need to appoint an interim ED in order, and that person has to appoint the principal, even an acting principal. So the board has no authority, and in fact really is prohibited from being able to appoint anyone into other than the ED.
So, boy, does that mean that we want to suspend this committee, or does this committee then become advisory to the new executive director?
I think I mean, so the clarity that I got, I'll just sort of elaborate on Pauline's statement, is that the ED is the one that appoints the principal according to both our bylaws and the state law.
Yeah.
But the board, the board and the ED will make the final selection of the ED. Will make the board working with the ED would make the selection of the principal.
Yeah.
And the ED will be the one who does the appointment of the principal. So we have a long ways to go to nominate a small group of people, small group of candidates to the board and the ED for consideration. So I think if anything, we should continue forward as quick as we can.
So the role of the principal search committee becomes not one to hire a principal, but to recommend a few final candidates to the interim ED who will hopefully be in place by then. And both of these paths can be going on simultaneously.
Which was always the role.
Yes, the role
Right.
was never, the role was never
Yeah, just for
to,
clarity.
it's sort of in contrast to the interim ED search committee. The interim ED search committee is nominating one person,
We'll nominate,
No,
we will
Candidate-
recommend candidates.
candidates, okay, I wasn't clear
and
from the
my-
discussion.
Yeah, so we would recommend candidates, and I guess my
Okay.
expectation from the principal search committee is that you would screen the candidates and nominate candidates to move forward in the process. So I actually see them working.
Okay, so
very
we're working
similar.
on we're working toward the same goal of nominating a small set of candidates to the full board for consideration.
Or to the interim ED or
ED.
E.
Well, the clarity is that the board, working with the ED, would interview and make the selection. The ED would make the appointment.
So it seems to me like it's still putting the cart before the horse for us to be selecting candidates when it's the executive director's prerogative to hire them.
I don't think it'd be,
No.
no, I don't see it that way. I mean, I think you're identifying candidates.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with identifying candidates, but that candidate can't be finalized until there is an interim ED. I think that's the distinction. So I don't think we should be waiting to have an interim ED to begin searching for candidates. We should be surfacing candidates that we put in a holding pattern. We should be 100% clear with them of that that's gonna be the timeline, that it's contingent, their being hired is contingent upon, an interim ED being identified, which we think is gonna happen, soon. We shouldn't be misleading about the timeline with them, but we shouldn't not be looking aggressively for that candidate.
I think the distinction here is that interim ED is definitely a one-year interim role. It is not the permanent ED. That is a separate search that will get kicked off in the fall,
Yeah.
right? So whoever comes in as principal, that you're concerned about not having the number one, they're not gonna have that person for a
Right.
full year no matter what.
And I think
They
that's
have to
what-
understand that it is an interim situation.
So I guess, do we have any,
But the principal is a permanent principal for the next 10 years,
So that was why the group,
ideally.
the group that was selected, and it was very purposeful, because these are the people that are gonna be working or with this principal much more long-term than this interim
Right.
person. In terms of parents and faculty and staff.
Yeah.
and I think I would reiterate the request for a consultant because it's such a strange set of
Situation.
circumstances. And I don't know what best practice is. Presumably somebody out there does. Or we are just completely blazing a new trail.
I see value in a search firm, to help
I
guide
mean,
this process.
I'm sorry, but I've actually been in contact with numerous search firms, just talking to them about the whole processes. And so they're very well educated in looking for executive directors and principals. I have 4 that I've already talked to. So I could share these 4 with the principal search task force, and you guys can call them and talk to them.
I think that'd be great.
And that'd be great.
Yeah, and to be
Plan-
clear,
plan
we
on
actually
spend-
need to.
Yeah, I spent probably about an hour and a half talking with each of them, so put some time aside when you do that.
And they'll go through,
They'll go through the procurement process. We do have to have this go through the
Yep,
procurement.
and which
process,
which we did. We're on top of it.
And in finance committee, we did,
Yeah. All right, so I think we've answered, just to iterate, to go through the questions and say what we've heard for answers is, we've discussed in detail the appointment of who has the authority to appoint the interim principal, that would be the interim ED. Can the assistant principal take on the role of principal based on job description? I don't know if that's a board question, or,
do we need to make that decision today?
it was a question asked by the committee. I don't know if it's something we can answer today.
And
It would just
identify as
help.
urgent.
Can you repeat that question, please?
So the question is, can the assistant principal take on the role of principal right now? Can Mr. Porter take on the role of principal, given that we don't have a principal in place?
I mean,
We still need an ED, interim
Right, we
ED
still-
to make that determination.
So we need an
can't-
ED to make
yeah,
that
to
appointment.
make that, and
Okay,
that's an
that's,
internal.
because that's an internal decision, okay.
So the only thing we,
Roger, I think with that question, I mean, if someone got hit by a bus and it's the principal, who steps in immediately? Is it the is it the assistant principal who then
Yes.
has to step in?
Yeah.
And, I mean,
That's not the way the job description's written. That's not the way the job description's written, so.
But I think that's important, when we look at these search firms, the first thing they're gonna ask too is they wanna see the, job description for an executive director, the principal, and the assistant principal, so they can help really find the right person for that middle thing that we're looking for, which is the principal. So I think we were just as a committee wondering, what are those clear descriptions that we can look at so we can understand and be able to talk to a search firm
think in part too, and maybe it's not the committee's place, but we're concerned about what administrative things need to happen between now and August 18th. And now I'm just wondering, that may just be beyond our scope. We were just sitting there talking about principals and not having one, and that's how the subject came.
So there are a lot of things that the school has put in place because of the structure that currently exists that are pushed down to the existing administrators and department chairs. And I will say that the executive committee, which is Craig, Tom, Roger, and I, have been in frequent communication with the business manager and the director of accountability as needed when questions arise. And we have not identified, so anyone at the school should surface questions through to those two individuals. At the current time, we haven't identified decisions that aren't being made.
Okay,
So I think there is concern that there are decisions that aren't being made, but in practicality, there haven't been any. And the school itself is set to open
okay.
with the teachers coming in on August 18th for orientation, and that's all set to go.
I think that answers a lot
So
of
does
the
that answer your
concern.
question?
Yeah.
But is the one thing the hiring,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that.
On what?
making hiring decisions?
Hiring teachers, there are some open positions, and is the only person that can hire, I would assume that we need an ED or a principal
That's
to.
not true,
No,
however.
that's not
That's
true.
not true. So we have, as a charter school, we have some flexibility in how to handle that. Department chairs actually have that authority. So we actually, I mean, there are other people that they can run that by as well.
Great.
But that is not actually held up either,
Okay, great.
so.
All good news.
But if there are questions, I think those should continually come to those of us on the executive committee or through those two administrators. Because so far, we have been able to work through and identify which ones actually the school has authority to do, and there's a difference between where the school has authority and whether there's procedures in place, right? There's a difference there. But there is the authority there.
Okay.
I had one more question for the principal search committee. In terms of the applicants you've already received, did you feel that you had candidates that pulled out of that, or you felt that, you're going to the search forum because you need to broaden your reach?
Well, I think we received more than 20 resumes for the position. The challenge is that we don't exactly know what we're looking for. I mean, as far as what are the requirements of an exceptional principal, we need to start from there and move forward. So that we have resumes that we think are good resumes, but since we as a committee haven't figured out the statement of what it is what are the attributes of an exceptional principal, we can't compare our resumes against that.
So-
How do you define good? I think that's what we were struggling with. Well, my definition of good as a parent may be different than a definition of a teacher who's sitting there who wants to report to someone that maybe has this or this, and me as a parent may be different, and someone else as a director head.
So I guess I'm confused, because that's why we've got multiple constituents on the search committee. So I appreciate the list of things that you've put together, and I think all of those things were good things, but it would seem like our number one priority is to figure out what we're looking for.
The qualities?
Yeah, well, we have met twice. We have met for 4 hours. We're consensus building to get to that point. But
We need to expedite that process.
Yes.
Oh, so is the question about the search, or having a search firm partially to streamline that and to help to triangulate those issues?
Yes.
Okay.
To work with us to help identify the process, to help get the job requirements, and to help surface the candidates as well, to give us
Not so much.
the process. It's not limited to providing candidates.
Okay. Sarah, you had a,
Yeah,
hold, sorry.
we have a question here right now.
This is just back on what you were talking about, the hiring process.
Yeah.
And I'm a little unclear about this, because my understanding, and I believe the business manager believes it too, is that although the department chairs do the interviewing, they make recommendations to the principal, who then
That's been the procedure. That's
Yeah,
been what
that's
the
correct.
procedure
So
is.
they have the authority to do that?
I think they still, they have the,
I just think it's nice to have a second party evaluate who they're recommending to hire.
That's a luxury that we don't have at this point in time.
Task force or something.
It's a luxury we do not have at this point in time. We put ourselves in a situation where we don't have that. So we have a choice of either opening school without teachers, or we have a choice of
But even
running
if we
without that
create a
luxury.
task force internally,
No. It's summer, there's not gonna be that time.
Well, I mean, isn't part of the process, and in the interview process, don't you involve people outside of the department as well? Or, I don't know.
honestly, I'm not sure on how they do
I
that.
don't know if there's a.
Usually the process, the department, consults. So like when we were hiring a history teachers and other teachers were invited to come and view the model lesson, and other people contributed to looking through the resume. And so it's not like a single person has hired this person.
So it's like a collective or
That's
That was
gonna,
my
collaborative.
understanding.
that's gonna
of
have
how
to
it
be good
works.
enough for now.
That was-
Yeah, I didn't know that, so.
And my understanding in the past, from what I heard from when Jay was here, is that usually the recommendations made by the department chair were accepted. Right.
My understanding has been that they have that, whatever that process is, that just outlined, then the department chairs make the recommendation to the principal, and that in this time, the principal's never overturned it, and then, yes, the ED also goes up, but in practice, in the last 3 years, nothing has ever been overturned at that level. So that process should be robust enough for now.
It's gotta be.
So I would, oh, I know Jen, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, I was on vacation, so I missed the first two, meetings, but I do have a fair amount of experience with hiring superintendents and principals. And I strongly support the gentleman, who I can't see because he's blocked by a meeting, who suggested that we are putting the cart before the horse in terms of going very far with the principal search before you have an executive director in place. You have to have the executive director in place to, set the charge for the principal and the search. I don't think it's harmful for the search committee to continue looking at resumes with a very clear, set of, requirements that are causing them to either discard a resume or such as being certified to serve in the role of principal, such as having past experience as a principal. But the executive director is the first primary role, and having the committee putting forth some, whittled down set of resumes certainly can't hurt anything. But, having everybody in place to do the hiring, that's up to you as the executive board, but executive director and the firm for that is the most important thing. I don't think the executive director will charge search of the principal and bring that. They may not need a firm per se, but the firm, the recommendation of the firm was more towards the executive director. I was confused, have you actually hired the firm that you've spoken to, and are they actually putting forth recommendations?
They
So,
are.
yeah, so what, I really went out and I wanted to kind of see what's going on with the process. So I talked to current superintendents, I sat down, had coffee with them. I sat down with the head of school at St. Mark's. We spent about 2 hours and just kind of told them, what the situation here is, and, asked them, how would you recommend we go through this process? I got a recommendation from a number of different firms, from a number of different people up in higher education, both in the public sector and the private sector. I called every single one of these firms. I spent about an hour and a half with each firm, talking to them. There was one person in particular who said that they would be willing to send us, do the screening of some people that they actually liked, send them to us, and we would only pay them if we ended up hiring those people. It's something that I worked out personally with that firm, so we're not on the hook if we don't hire these people.
It's not a
We do-
retained search.
Right, so we do have some other good people that we had kind of going through school spring that we liked also. And then we also have some other people that the firm has already talked to, already interviewed. So we're really we have a good pool of people for this, and we really have done a lot of work on this.
Right,
So-
so that, the hiring of that executive director, the first thing they're gonna have to do is kind of decompress and understand what went wrong, and what is the right person to fill the role. And that's not a.
And this is for the this is for the interim, is what, yes.
Yeah.
That's what the
And, you know, so we're looking for someone that has, we're looking for a seasoned person for this role, right? We're looking for someone that would actually help Amsa in the process of actually getting an executive director. These are some of the requirements that we're looking at, that we were talking about and that we're looking at in this task force.
But first and foremost, he has to be pivotal in his role.
Or she.
The acting, that person, interim ED is pivotal in the acting role of the principal, of finding that principal.
Yes.
And going very far in the search without that interim ED.
Yes, that is actually something the search firm actually talked about when I was talking to them too.
So I guess my question is that, maybe you're not screening candidates right now, but you're identifying the process to involve the community, in the search, overall process. I think there's still things that this committee can be doing, if you're not, or identifying some of the qualities based on the feedback that you're getting from the group of stakeholders that are, on the committee, for the candidate, or maybe redefining what the job descriptions could be, by getting feedback from the different people, because the people that are on this committee know more about the school than this interim ED will know in the first 2 or 3 weeks. So I think it's important that we begin to leverage some of that to build a framework, and then a seasoned interim ED will be able to provide a lot of guidance, I think, in the process. But for now, I wouldn't say disband the search committee. There's still a lot of work that can be done. Maybe you're not, bringing in candidates to review, but you're identifying the qualities that you're looking for in candidates, and that way, when that person comes in, they can really make a quick impact.
Again, I would think that we need expert guidance to do that.
Do you imagine that expert guidance needs to come from this interim ED, or do you imagine that it could come from a search firm?
Well,
I think one of the
it
people
comes
that
through
Scott
both.
is talking to could probably
Okay.
give us enough
Yeah.
pointers, because
I have the list right here. We can give you the list. And I do think, I really believe that the seasoned interim executive director will also help in that process. So it could be twofold. The search firm could actually begin, kind of qualifying some candidates, and then the interim executive director will also help through the process. So I think it could be both. And I also think that the task force could almost work as kind of a search committee in kind of, putting together good resumes over here. And, I know we've seen some resumes that really make no sense for the position. It's kind of saving some time. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and we were never looking at stopping the committee. We're emailing daily, we are getting together once a week, we're working really hard. But we thought that it was, be helpful to have a search committee work with us.
Yes.
And again, if we can find one that is willing to hire someone from that, and they would be a certain percent, that's great. But it was, that they would just be a small portion of helping us out, but we would still be working, we're working hard.
Yeah, I think a search firm can only add value to the process.
We are, to be clear, we're talking about a board meeting in 2 weeks to appoint that interim ED. So this is what you can, in that 2-week period of time, there's work that can be done with the search firm and all those other pieces of it.
Yeah, I think we have more than enough work to be done.
Real quick question on the, going back to a few minutes ago. Where was the guidance regarding the DOT's authority to appoint the principal director? Was that from Dees?
No, yes, we do not have the authority.
Right, I was
Yeah.
wondering what the resource on that was.
It's directly from Dees, it's also in our bylaws, yes.
So, I think we've got a lot of our questions answered, but I'd just like to walk through the rest of them to make sure that we're on the same page. Let's see. So, with the questions I had, authority to appoint the interim principal, we talked extensively about that. Is there a budget for hiring an outside search firm? The answer I'm hearing is yes on that. Can the search?
Let's be clear, we put a budget together last year, we did
Right.
not put a budget line item to say, go out and hire search firms. That being said,
But there's
the
other-
school has a surplus, of funds, and this seems like an appropriate use of the funds. Let's move forward.
Okay. I think that answered the questions I had. Anybody else in the committee, Ann, or other questions? All right, thank you.
While we are doing these updates, before we get to the collective bargaining, can we also have an update from the Connected Greatness Task Force with the third-party consultant? And this is the third party that has been hired, the firm that's been hired to discuss culture and management practices at the school.
Okay, so the task force met by telephone on July 18th. That was the most recent. We've met twice since the last board meeting. Diana Hammer, who was the principal of the firm that's doing the work, at that point had interviewed about 20 people. Her colleagues had interviewed another 10, so the count was 30 at that time. At this point, she said she's identified some trends. She didn't really identify them to us, but told us that they were emerging, that the problems were, in fact, widespread, and that they were significant, and that she was gonna, so it's not, there are definitely issues, and it's a much broader population than just a few isolated individuals. Whether it's most people or not, she didn't really go there, but the fact is that it's real and it's pretty big, I think is what she was getting very clearly from the interviews. She also is interviewing former employees as well as former administrators. She believes she should have the interviews completed pretty much within the next couple of weeks. And the plan is for her to debrief with the task force, which is Rick, Scott, and myself, and for us to then bring it to, again, this was the plan at the time of the meeting, was to find a way to bring it to first the board, then the faculty and staff, and then the larger community, and to orchestrate those steps so that happened in a way that was fair and helpful to everybody. And we yet need to figure out how to do that within the confines of our mandate and the rules about open meetings and that kind of thing. The next step will be her report back to us within the next 3 weeks. And then the three of us will put our heads together on what do we think the best way to get this back to the board, to the faculty and staff, and to the rest of the Amsa community. And that we also need, in doing that, to check with legal counsel to see how it affects, if it does, anything that's going on with collective bargaining.
This is a climate survey, though. Why would there be anything in there that would affect collective bargaining?
Because some of the ways that people are feeling about how they've been treated could arguably be working conditions.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Because if people feel they're not being treated fairly, that could be a working condition. And we don't know what's subject to negotiation or not, so we need guidance on that.
So then we can move on to the formal communication on the collective bargaining agreement. So we did receive the notification, and we did send out the alert now to the, or whatever it's called. It's not called an alert now anymore.
Community
An
alert.
an alert to the community that the Teamsters Local 170 are representing the full-time and part-time regular teachers and guidance counselors, not nurses, not department heads, not any other management staff. What that means, and to be clear, all the teachers that are currently here are working under a contract. They've signed a contract for the next school year, and the new hires will be replaced, or the replacements will be with the existing contract terms that we have. The negotiations, when the union is ready to come to the board actually is responsible for those negotiations. That's when these negotiations will actually begin. So the collective bargaining covers all of the teachers in that unit, all the staff in that unit. The faculty can elect to be part of the union or not part of the union, but regardless of whether they choose to be, what that is negotiated, it affects all of them. So it becomes, whatever the overall agreement is. Until such time as we have those negotiations, though, all the teachers are working under existing contracts.
And the next step is governed by the union approaching the board
Correct.
to negotiate.
Yeah, we can discuss this today, whether we want to appoint that negotiating committee now, or whether we want to do that at a later
Want to wait
time
till we
point.
have
I recommend a
members of
later
the
We
board.
may wait, yeah.
Would they
There's
come
no
to a-
need to do it now,
Yeah.
but we could to get ready, but.
Are those, negotiations, are those public, or are those closed door?
The negotiations are public.
They are public, so which will be announced now, they're like
Yeah.
board meetings.
Are they open meeting? I thought they're not open
I
meeting.
didn't think they were.
A lot of them are. A lot of them are.
Now, let's say that we think they're open meeting, and we'll double check that.
Negotiating strategy isn't, but the actual
No.
negotiations
So-
are. I think
so-
that's the difference.
So
That's-
Jen was on negotiations committee
So,
for the school committee.
Well, it may be different under the charter, but,
Okay.
contract negotiations are not in the public school sector.
It's a question for an attorney.
okay,
I don't
that's
think they
question
are.
for attorney. My understanding was that they were, but then that,
We have an understanding, and we're gonna go double check it.
let me clarify that. The negotiation, the initiation of negotiation.
When the union was to start the negotiation process, they would contact the chair of the board to begin the process.
The other thing that I would like to make clear, which we have also gotten questions about, was the role of the faculty rep on the board. And there is nothing about how we operate as a board that prohibits the faculty rep from being a member of the board while we have a union. The union may choose to do something with that role, but from the board's perspective, the faculty rep is still a member of the board. The faculty rep has to recuse themselves from anything discussing, their own working terms anyway. So those would be the things that would be a concern.
I wasn't gonna volunteer for the negotiating committee.
No?
Okay, I think we're through most of this. Let's move to committee updates, and then we'll cycle back at the end. We'll do governance at the end also with the charter and the annual report. So finance.
Okay, this is our, through the fiscal year ending June 30th. That's when our fiscal year ends, is June 30th. If everybody doesn't know, as a charter school, we're subject to an audit every year. Our auditors came in, started that process in June. They'll be auditing the 630 numbers. That's why these numbers are preliminary and unaudited at this point in time. They will come back at the October board meeting to present the final audited numbers and any recommendations that they have, and then we will file that with the state at that point in time. So what I'm going to walk us through is where we came out, for the year. So the preliminary numbers of where we came out through the year. So this column that we're in right here, this is July 1st, 2013 through June 30th of 2014 is what we're looking at. So tuition came in at 12,233 is where tuition came in. This is what we had been budgeting, and that's the delta between what we had been budgeting and what we actually came in at. So we actually came in about $400,000 higher than the guidance that we received from the state at the beginning of the year. That was a pleasant surprise there. Next line item here relates to grants and donations of $261,470. It includes our annual giving of $49,588. I'm going to change to a different sheet here that gives us all of our grant information through the year. And I should say 630, since 631 doesn't really exist out there. We won't lose a lot of sleep over that. So this is a list of all the grants that we've received this year and what we spent to date on it. These grants up here are all our entitlement grants that come from the state. These are the private grants that came through: MathWorks, Math Moves You, Harvard Pilgrim, the Jacobson Foundation, Armed Forces Communication and Electronics. We'll come back to that one in a second. These in-kind grants, this represents equipment and things like that that were donated to us. So this is not cash. This is equipment that was donated to us. Received 2 items there. And down here, we have Sprout money that came in this fiscal year. So the Sprout campaign started in the spring of 2013, but we received an additional $16,851 that came in this fiscal year. Our annual giving campaign from this fall brought in $49,588. Scholarship money that we received, the school solicited scholarships on behalf of the seniors and then dispersed that money to the seniors. Money that came in, and then just some miscellaneous donations. We also received $45,000 from the foundation. This column represents what we've spent at this point in time. So of the $45,000 grant, we spent $22,605 of it. We still have $22,395 left, and that's consistent with everything else in this column that you'll see here. What I wanted to ask the board at this point in time is there are 2 line items that we have not previously accepted or voted to accept. The first one was this Armed Forces Communications Electronic Association grant, $2,000 designated for hydroponics and aquaponics science and teaching tools is what this was for. And we have not voted to accept the annual giving of $49,588. So I'd like to ask for a motion that we accept that money and move forward from there.
I'd like to make the motion to accept the annual giving campaign and the Armed Forces grant.
Second.
Roger made the motion and Chris seconded. Board, all in favor of accepting these grants?
So again, you'll see here, the total 470 is the total that's there. And if we come back over to the financial statements, you're gonna see 470. So that's the detail of all the grants that we received throughout the year. Miscellaneous incomes relates to interest that we earn, a variety of other things, came in pretty much spot on with what we had budgeted for the whole year. Again, what you gotta remember here, in the context on the income side, $12 million in tuition money, that is by far the biggest piece of our total income that comes in there. So the rest of these numbers are not huge in comparison to that. The nutrition program, we brought in $121,000. We've been budgeting $165,000. That related to the fact that we exited out of the DEAS program in the spring time frame there. So we came in less than that and than what we were budgeting. Remember that $43,000 number. We'll come back to that in a second. Student programs. This represents all the activity fees flow through here, any field trips flow through here. This also represented Book Fest and summer school that were run through here last year. It was substantially over what we had budgeted because of some of those items there. We brought in $432,000 there. Our athletic program brought in $160,000, substantially over what we had budgeted. Again, we had huge participation in track, so the majority of that delta there, that 20,000 delta, just relates to the number of folks that we had coming in through our track program. And the final number that I want to highlight here, regional transportation. This is money that we received to run the regional buses. 223,523 is what came in through that number. I'm going to flip over to a separate spreadsheet here just so that we can look at this in total. Okay? Fees collected, 210,917. That's money that we received from parents. We have no fees outstanding. We were able to collect all of the fees that we were owed at this point in time. So that was very good news there. Required a fair amount of work chasing down people to get that money collected. It was all due in the October time frame. Some of it lingered into, really quite frankly, as far as June of this year, I think it lingered into. But we collected all the money that we were owed there. We received $12,606 from the state, bringing our total fees collected to $223. The cost of the regional buses is $224. The net cost to Amsa for the regional buses for last year was $1,000. Okay? We come back to the year-to-date information, or actually the full year information. Obviously, salaries is our single biggest expense. Salaries and benefits are single biggest expense. Salaries was spot on with what we had budgeted for the year. Benefits was higher than what we had budgeted. We had a lot of more people signing up for medical benefits than we had anticipated. We have reflected that in the 2015 budget numbers. We don't expect to be surprised there again. But obviously, those are the two biggest numbers. Professional development, this is money that we spend to reimburse the teachers or send the teachers to, to classes and various programs out there, spot on with what we had budgeted. Instructional supplies came in a little bit lower than we had budgeted, $389. So student programs, this is the other side of the student expense. So again, we had all the activities that was up here, that was coming in through the student program number up here. We have some of the costs that are flowing out through the student programs number. Again, this was higher than what we budgeted because the school went out and bought books for Book Fest and things like that. We had significantly more people taking AP tests than we had anticipated as well. That was another thing that drove it up. Had some of the things that don't run through the student program, though, are all of the stipends. So for any of the after-school programs or extracurricular programs and things like that, that runs through our salaries number up here. So the student programs does not capture all of the costs associated with running the programs. Nutrition came in at, on the expense side, $126,000. So if you remember, I said, remember that $44,000 number, it cost us $44,000 less than we thought. We collected $44,000 less than we thought because of the change in the nutrition program. We spent $44,000 less than we thought we were going to spend because of the change in the nutrition program. Athletics, you'll see in here at $413. Part of this athletics number relates to our leasing of 4 kicks to support our PE program as well. Okay, things that don't run through the athletics program, again, the coaches' salaries would not run through the athletics program. That runs through the salary number that's out there. But reasonably close to what we had budgeted for the year. Student transportation. So student transportation includes, well, you can see it up there, the $224,000 number that we already talked about from regional busing. It also includes buses for field trips and things like that. It includes buses for athletics, also runs through this number, and then McKinney-Vento, and then we own 2 buses, so there's some excise tax associated with that and gas for the Amsa buses and things like that.
What's
So,
McKinney-Vento?
McKinney-Vento relates to transportation of homeless students back to our school. So if somebody becomes homeless and ends up living in another district, they still can come back to here if they're classified as a homeless person.
Thank you.
And that cost us $10,000. This was the first year that we had that expense, but that's a mandated expense. We don't have any choice on that. Next thing here, lease, CAM, and taxes. So lease, common area maintenance, and taxes came in spot on with what we were budgeted. The school does pay our lease, so there seems to be some confusion out there that I want to make sure I dispel. The school pays our lease expense. The school also pays our tax expense. What the school is not doing at this point is reimbursing to our landlord the CAM expenses because we have a dispute with the landlord regarding the CAM expenses. We expense it, but we do not send a check to them at this point in time. We'll talk about that in a second later on. But contrary to what you might read somewhere, we do pay our lease. Facilities came in a little bit higher than we had budgeted. We ended up getting some new copiers that came in here, nothing dramatic there. So obviously, after salaries, facilities is our lease is our next biggest expense on the expense side of the equation. Facilities came in right where we thought it was. Utilities basically right where we thought it was. Our IT spend came in right where we thought it was going to. We did hire a consultant to come in and do a security audit for us at the end of the year. That was unbudgeted, but certainly warranted, and appreciate the feedback we got there. The auditor expense came in a little bit less than we were expecting it to. Our legal expense. So we had a budget of $300,000 for our legal. We have incurred $371,000 for legal. We've also received back from our insurance company over $250,000 at this point in time as it relates to our legal expenses. Our lawsuit with our landlord is not obviously our only legal expense, but that is the majority of our legal costs at this point in time. Other operating expenses was pretty much in line with what we were looking for. Again, you can see that's postage, bank fees, the online store. When people use a credit card, obviously there's a cost associated with that to the school. That flows through this line item. And depreciation for long-lived assets, we put those on our balance sheet, and then we depreciate them over 7 years or 5 years or whatever the appropriate lifespan is. We were a little off on our estimations there, but that's a non-cash expense. At the end of the day, the school's bottom line, we took in $648,000 more than we spent for the year. We had initially budgeted making about $100,000, so we came in substantially higher than that. If again, you come back to $400,000 that we received more in tuition than we were expecting, that is the majority of the delta in what we were budgeting to make and what we actually made at the end of the day. Okay, that's the preliminary and unaudited income statement. Just real quick, pull up the balance sheet here. You see this number here, $6 million. That's how much cash we have on hand as of June 30th at this point in time. I talked about CAM charges. Those are charges that are in dispute with our landlord. We expense those charges at this point in time, but we've not been writing the check. We are holding that money off to the side. If we prevail in our lawsuit, we think we're going to be able to keep that money. If we do not prevail in the lawsuit, we're going to have to write a check to the landlord for that money that we've been withholding. That's over $600,000 of the $6 million that's out there at this point in time. Okay? You see $6 million out there. $6 million looks like a lot of money. $6 million is a lot of money. If you remember, though, the school runs about $1 million a month is what the school run rate is. Okay, so if you want to think about having 6 months in your back pocket or something like that, we have less than 6 months in our back pocket. Why does this matter? The reason it matters is we didn't actually receive our June tuition payment. Okay, no charter school in Massachusetts received its June tuition payment. There was a screw up in the processing of tuition payments, and we did not get that money in until July. Now, if we didn't have a surplus like we have out here, we would have been in a situation where we would have had to be running out to our banks and trying to secure some bridge financing so that we could make the payrolls, make our lease payments and things like that. So while we have money on hand, I don't want people to think that we are incredibly flush. We have several months of surplus. We do not have several years of surplus that is out there with that. Okay? That's the highlights of the balance sheet. Any questions? Let me go with the board first, and then see if we can get some questions. Any questions from the board on what we've got here?
Is there a rule of thumb for the surplus that we should be shooting for, Carrie?
There isn't a rule. There isn't specifically a rule of thumb. You will see when our auditors present the financials that they will bring comparative information for charter schools out there. You will see that charter schools have been out there for a long time. Some of them have over a year in surplus. You will see some schools that have much less than that. So there isn't specifically a rule of thumb. Not that many years ago, the school was living hand to mouth, where we had to go out and borrow money to be able to make payroll, and then we would pay that money back because the tuition payments only come in on a quarterly basis. We're not in that situation anymore, and obviously that is not a good situation to be in because you get charged a lot of interest when on a short-term loan like that. So the fact that we've got 5 months is good. I'd like to see more than 5 months out there, but it beats not having any months out there is basically what it means. So there isn't specifically a rule of thumb. Not entirely different than people say that you should have a rule of thumb. You should have 6 months cash on hand for your personal self. I think that's a decent thing to be striving to, but at $1 million a month is our spend rate. I wouldn't feel bad if we had a little bit more.
Now, DEAS is supposed to move to reimbursing us on a monthly basis, right, at some point?
DEAS is supposed to be moving to reimbursing us on a monthly basis. We thought that was going to start, we actually thought that was going to start in the fall of last year. Then we thought it was going to start December/January of last year. And we got to the end of the year, and they missed making a payment to us through whatever kind of administrative screw-up they had, and it fell into July. I can't honestly tell you when they're going to start reimbursing us on a monthly basis.
It does seem that's what is being communicated on DEAS's website, though.
Right, but it hasn't happened. I mean, they're not even making their quarterly payments.
They were late on their quarterly payments. Obviously, there was some sort of, making light of it, there was some sort of computer glitch, something happened. That being said, our teachers and our landlord expect to be paid and don't want to hear about a glitch that DEAS had in sending us the money. So it's good that we had the money on hand. Anything else from the board?
I have a question. So one thing that is confusing to me is why, I'm new, I'm sorry if this is a really elementary question. Why are we collecting so much in fees? Why are we 170% over, I don't understand that.
That's budget.
That's 170% over the budget. So the budget for student programs is a best guess is what the budget for student programs is. If you look at some of the delta that was out there, 50,000 of that delta related to BookFest that hadn't been budgeted for. So when we put BookFest in place in August of 2013, we didn't know that that was going to happen when we put the budget together in, a year before that. We didn't know that we were going to use the school's facilities for summer school and things like that. So that's 80,000 of the 177,000 out there. And so there's things that we don't know are going to occur. And then the offset to that student program expense, offset to the student program income is the student program expense. And you'll see that the student program expense is $94,000 higher than we budgeted for similar reasons.
Okay.
So it's a good question. It's not nothing wrong with that question. Other questions from the board? I think there was one question out in the audience.
I have two things. One is, there's so many columns there. I was just wondering if you could freeze the titles when you're, going through P&L. And then the second thing is that, on the legal expenses, I kind of lost track of how many lawsuits there's out there. So that $371,000, how many lawsuits is that? What are they?
There's,
If you're at liberty to say.
yeah,
And then compared to last year.
I'm not going to go into all the lawsuits that are going on at this point in time. The biggest piece of that relates to our ongoing litigation with our landlord, which if you're interested, you can go find, it's out there in the courts and you can read about that. And that's been going on for several years, and that's the biggest piece of that. And there's other items that are going on. The school is in a position where it has to defend itself. There are other things that are going on where the school has to defend itself.
Those are really small though, compared to the legal.
I think we got a question in the back.
Yeah, what's the main driver of the difference in tuition, the additional $1 million that came in? Is it based on student population, reimbursement from the state?
It's all, the student tuition is all based on a formula from what we got from the state. So we received information from the state, and it was only $422,000, just to be clear, it wasn't $1 million difference. We received information from the state at the beginning of last year when we were putting the budget together to budget about a 1% increase. People move between, there's different reimbursement rates for people that are in the middle school versus in the high school and things like that. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and it came in higher, 4% higher than what we had budgeted. The other thing I'll say on that is, since that is our single biggest source of revenue by far, we are particularly conservative in the budgeting that we do on that. We would much rather be pleasantly surprised when we receive $400,000 extra over what we budgeted than if we had received $400,000 less, we would be in a much worse off situation at this point in time. So that's the situation there.
And that leads to the surplus, but is there an additional capital program or campaign for facilities and or other unforeseen expenses other than that surplus?
There is not, for unforeseen expenses other than that surplus, like looking for hiring a search firm to help finding a principal or an executive director, there is no other program to generate additional surpluses. We budgeted generating about $120,000 surplus. So we budgeted spending 99% of what we thought we were going to take in at the end of the day. Fortunately, we took in more than we expected to take in. Now, in terms of a capital campaign for a new facility or something like that, that's really a fundraising question that's out there. When the time comes, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But right now, we're in a long-term lease. This is the situation we find ourselves in right now.
Also, Tom, you may talk about last year. I think last year, in the previous fiscal year, our tuition came in slightly below what we had expected it to be due to one of the town's reimbursement rates changing.
So the town's reimbursement
So
rates change
it's been
all
all
the
over the
time,
map.
so it's just an estimate at the beginning of the year. But then if the town decides that it's going to build a new building or something like that, or the town passes an override or something like that, we benefit from that. But it's unrealistic to budget, and really in Massachusetts, I think everybody's familiar with the concept of 2.5% override. Property tax can't go up by more than 2.5%. We shouldn't be expecting their tuition is ever gonna, we shouldn't be planning on it ever going up by more than 2.5%. We budgeted for it to go up about 1% this year, unfortunately, it went up about 4%. Okay?
I'm wondering what happens, or do you have a process for figuring out what you're gonna do with the excess collected for athletic programs?
So there wasn't
There
an
is no
excess, there isn't an excess collected for
Expenses went up,
athletic
too.
programs, okay? So again, not all of the athletic expenses flow through the athletic expenses line. What doesn't flow through that line is the transportation expense flows through transportation. The coach's expense flows through coaches. So we do not make money on our athletics program.
And student programs too.
Same thing
Athletic
with
and
student programs. We don't make money on our student programs. All right, that's the finance committee report at this point in time, Pauline.
Okay. You want to make a comment about the foundation, or do that in fundraising?
You know, I can make a comment about the foundation. So there was a comment made at our last, well, not our last board meeting, but I think our June board meeting, our open board meeting. Currently, Amsa had an existing foundation that is out there that we will refer to as the old foundation. We started a new foundation to facilitate a real estate transaction and potentially be used for fundraising going forward. We opened that foundation over a year ago, and we've been waiting on IRS designation for that foundation. That actually just came in yesterday. So there are now 2 AMSA foundations out there that do in fact have tax-deductible status. That being said, we did not run anything through the new foundation that we had started. The annual giving campaign, the Sprout giving campaign, those were all run through the school, which is perfectly fine from a tax-deductible standpoint. So the new foundation hasn't engaged in any fundraising at all at this point in time. All it is really engaged in is looking at facilitating a real estate transaction for us. But we set it up so that it would also be able to do fundraising on a go-forward basis. And now we have tax-exempt status. So the statement that was made at last public session is not entirely accurate.
Well, it was accurate at the time. We just got that tax exempt status
We
now,
did just
so.
get the tax-exempt status. It took over a year for us to get that tax-exempt status.
Okay. I'm going to skip over governance. Can we move to an ed committee update?
Sure. So we met Monday? A week ago Monday. Days going by too fast. And we talked about multiple things, but really our focus was on a discussion of the goals and the role of the committee. We have a lot of new members on the ed committee, and we had a good public participation at this last meeting. So we wanted to really clarify what the role of the ed committee is in terms of what we can do in terms of, curriculum, its review and approval, not necessarily writing, guidance, and governance. And then we also dived into the strategic partners report and really highlighting, a concern with a high attrition rate and the sped subgroup. So we really want to take a deeper dive and look at that and see why students are leaving. So we're going to work with the registration department to understand if there's exit interviews and what the policies are in place to kind of document that. So we're beginning those discussions. Our next meeting is in September, and our goal is that at that meeting, Mike will be there, Mike Lebowski, as the curriculum coordinator, to kind of tell us how he'll be supporting the ed committee in his new role. I sent out the minutes to the board. If there's any, were there any questions?
Fundraising?
No report this month.
No report. You didn't meet this week. Okay. All right. So that moves to the governance committee. So we've got I circulated a lot of documents for you to read. So let's go over the draft revisions to the bylaws. We have discussed these in the past couple of meetings, but we've discussed them extensively within governance committee. So the main point of revising these bylaws was to address new regulations adopted by DEEP in April 2014. And I just wanted to highlight that that a number of them were clarifications and wording changes and really small things. But there were a couple of things, it's things like we have to meet in Massachusetts, we
Which we had never done, but we had.
Which we'd never
We had
done, but-
clarify that in the bylaws.
Well, we now have to change that. We're not allowed to meet, in Rhode Island for any reason. That there's a lot of wording changes throughout that the board oversees and does not develop, does not manage. It really changes, much more than it used to be. And then there was also clarification that board members need to undergo orientation and training within the first year of being appointed to the board. So those are the new regs. We also changed corrected the wording of the mission statement to be consistent with the wording in the charter. That's something that the bylaws apparently have not been consistent with the charter for 9 years, and it was just a error, I think. Changes to the faculty and parent rep term limits and faculty rep eligibility. So the faculty and parent reps currently serve 1-year terms, and we're keeping that. We are changing it so that they can serve 2 consecutive terms, but instead of the current situation, which is where they can serve 3 consecutive terms. All trustees can serve 2 consecutive terms. Other non-faculty and parent rep trustees serve 3-year terms, and those trustees can serve 2 consecutive terms as well, so 6 years. We're proposing that this is how it is now, that they can be reelected after a 1-year absence. What we're proposing in governance is that there's a maximum term limit of 20 years for any trustees. So we talked about that last time as well. That's a new requirement for.
We're required to give a maximum term.
Yeah, max. And the only other change is that the fundraising committee becomes a development committee. Fundraising committee becomes a development committee.
And there was there was another change to the faculty rep.
Oh,
The
yeah,
other change to the faculty rep?
then it can't be a department head.
Yes, there's another change to the faculty rep position, which is that role needs to be elected by the it needs to be a member of the general faculty body, and if that person becomes a department chair or has administrative responsibilities, then that position needs to be vacated, and a different rep needs to be appointed. So those are the changes in the bylaws.
Can I ask a question? So if I serve 2 years as the faculty rep and then I'm no longer eligible,
No, you're not eligible for a 1-year absence.
so I could take 1 year off and then go back and be elected?
Correct.
So what if at the end of my 2 years, I want to be the parent rep? Do I still have to take a year off?
Yes.
Can you be
That's
a
how the
parent,
wording is.
can you be a parent rep
No.
though? I don't know if you can be a parent
No.
rep because you're a faculty
I don't
member.
think I don't think so. I
Or
have to look
if
at
I'm
the.
no longer a faculty
Sorry, draft the law.
Then you can be a parent rep, as long as you're a parent.
I think we had any trustees need to take a year off.
Yes.
Okay.
After serving 2 terms.
After serving 2 consecutive terms, a trustee has to take a year off,
Okay.
and then they can serve.
So,
Whatever
I
role.
mean, just,
So that's-
just on the, I mean, because it's possible that you could have a situation, because I am also a
Right.
parent, but,
Actually, no. She could become a trustee, similar to what Roger did. After he served his 3 terms, he became a trustee. So if you qualified as a parent rep, would she
Yeah.
need that 1-year gap?
No, but we didn't have that in the bylaws before. The old bylaws did
Yeah,
not
the old-
have that.
So,
I think parent, yes, even parent rep would have to take a
So
year.
this is a change, so this is a good question, because to make it clear. So we're actually not in a what we're proposing means that the parent rep can't become a trustee
right
Without
away.
one
right
year.
away.
Right.
There's, by definition,
So
needs to be
the
like
rep
that.
has to take a year off.
So-
The rep has to be.
So everybody has to take a year off, even if your roles are changing.
Yes.
So if in 2 years, I am no longer an employee and would like to be the parent rep because I am still a parent, I would still have to take a year off.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Not that I really want to spend that much. Just to be clear.
Just to be clear. Yeah. So that's what we're having for everybody, that all trustees after 2 consecutive terms take a year off.
Okay.
Okay? So that's what we're voting on.
Make a motion that we accept those changes to the bylaws.
All right, vote. Anyone in favor? Okay.
Good work,
Motion
policy.
passes unanimously, so I will get.
Thank you, governance committee.
Thank you.
If that was all that we had to approve.
If that was all we had, that's just
Oh,
one
we
thing.
can't go
But
home.
so those will, just to be clear, those are gonna be submitted to Dees. And then they do not become effective until we get approval from these.
So we're still governed under the
We're
current
still
bylaws.
governed under our current bylaws, yeah, until we get that acceptance. We then have 3 school policy handbooks to review, or to approve, I should say. First of all, the employee manual, and I'm going to just highlight the new changes. I went through it, summarized all of them, but I'm going to highlight the new changes, which are new policies, because that's what we should really be focused on. The addition of fingerprinting background checks for all employees, that's a new state requirement, and the board or governance committee recommends that the school reimburse all employees for that, the cost of that check. The addition of a credit card policy, because there was not one before, and the school just started accepting credit cards in the last year and a half. And the credit card policy would be that they can, credit cards can only be taken for transactions through electronic means and not over the telephone or in any other way besides 2 specified electronic means. That there is the addition of a licensure advancement for teachers. If there is, if teachers get an advanced degree or get some kind of additional licensure, that there's an automatic $2,500 increase in their salaries. And then the addition of a faculty dress code. Those are the major changes. Those are the new policies, I should say. There are other changes throughout. So, if there are any questions on any of the faculty handbooks?
I'm just wondering, I don't have a problem with it, but shouldn't that go?
Talking about
My question would be the reimbursement. I mean, I certainly don't have a problem with it, but would that be something that would have to be addressed with the union down the road?
Down the road, it would.
Okay.
But this is something that was in place
Okay.
beforehand, so, or we were moving, there were drafts of this circulating around, and we had been talking about this in governance in the last couple of months, so it's moving in that direction.
Okay.
Okay? Should we do all of these individually, or?
I think we should
better
do them
individually?
I think it'd be best to do them individually.
All right,
This was the
employee
this
handbook.
is the employee and, human
Person.
resources manual.
And one of the things that came up in the ed committee meeting was the recommendation that when staff gets this document, I assume during the first week of school, that there be a cover page that highlights any changes, because it's a long document, and sometimes people assume that it's just the same, and they might not read it very thoroughly, and I do, but, so in any of these new manuals, if there can be,
That actually came up in governance.
that came up
Yeah.
in
oh, governance, not
You
ed
were there
committee,
too.
it was, all right, that's why it came up, all right,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, it did come up in governance that, and we request that the school would put a cover letter summarizing the changes, which I just summarized. If you want my notes.
I just wrote down.
Well, those are the new policies, there were other
Yeah,
changes,
I'll go through it.
right, that were summarized as well. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve that policy?
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
When we were at governance, there was a question about, in the faculty dress code,
Yeah.
about the sandals.
Right.
And you said you were gonna look into the policy, and I didn't know if there was, what the final result was.
We
Yes, so there's revised language is what that was circulated, do I have a copy of that? It got clarified, so there was no contradiction, right? The concern was that open-toed sandals were allowed, but then they weren't allowed.
Right.
And so now there's clarifying language as to what actually is allowed.
Okay, great, thank you.
So,
Make a motion
okay.
to approve the employee
And human resources.
and
manual.
human resources manual.
A second.
All right, all in favor of approving that one? Okay, that one passes unanimously. Now, the next one is the faculty and staff handbook. So the major changes for that,
Wait, what's the difference? I thought we just did that. No, this is.
so a fair amount of the changes for that were compliance related. Things having to do with children at risk of abuse and neglect, streamlined security, how students may appear on the Amsa website, that their parents can do an opt-out form, and that teachers need to check before putting students on the website. That very clearly saying that students should never be left unattended or that teachers should be alone with students with the door closed. And that it's the responsibility of all faculty to monitor hallways during transition times. Those were the major changes. So were there any questions on faculty and staff? No?
Make a motion to approve the faculty and staff handbook.
Second it?
Okay, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously as well. Okay, so the student parent handbook. This one had quite a bit that was new, and again, much of this has to do with regulations, but there were the addition of gender, non-discrimination, including gender identity language throughout. There is clarification on the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, where the school is allowed to disclose directory level information, not other private information, but directory level information. And if parents do not want that disclosed, then they can notify the school, they can opt out of that. There is a change, so there's no drop-off outside of designated drop-off areas in the morning. Student drivers need to wait until buses leave to depart, or they can leave right away, but then they can't depart when buses are departing. Another change is that students will be sent to the homework club or media club if they are not picked up by 3:40 p.m., and that matches the faculty handbook where the faculty has responsibilities for supervising students until 3:40. That was a gap in the past. Late arrivals are going to require a parent or guardian check-in, which can be done electronically or over the phone. Habitually tardy students will lose parking privileges or have their parking, those with student parking permits will have their privileges suspended for 2 weeks. There's a lot of new language on emergency renewal of students who are a danger to themselves or others, suspensions, short-term, long-term, what the due process situation is, and expulsion for various offenses. Another new thing is 24-hour notice of detentions, the potential loss of senior privileges or parking privileges under certain circumstances, and then a new lockdown policy, homelessness policy, home hospital instruction, restraining orders, and pregnant students. I think that was it. So those are the new changes. There's other changes throughout also, but the recommendation would be that the school, again, send out a summary of the changes to the student parent handbook. Although this one, for all the parents in the audience, I really recommend reading because there are changes throughout compared to last year. Question? I see a question. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if it's related to handbook, but will there be a registered carpool with PA?
That is not a handbook, but there is no registered carpool in the handbook currently, so that's been taken out of handbook. There's no registered carpool.
I think that note was sent out last year at the beginning of the school year. Right?
It was actually spring of last year.
Yeah, it was sent out last year with part of it, but there. Any other questions from the audience?
Make a motion to approve the
Student and parent.
parent handbook.
Second?
All in favor? All right, thank you. Thank you to the school administrators too, because a lot of them were working over the weekends to get all of this to us. Governance committee has gone back and forth with the school over the last 2 months on really clarifying all of the handbooks. I should also know, there was one other thing I wanted to note just for parents in the audience. There was a change. There's no change in dress code except that the PE dress code actually becomes more lenient. More lenient. So last year's dress code was going to be that there was only 1 year of this transition. That's not the case. Any PE clothes that you have are fine.
Oh,
So
we
that's-
should send out an alert.
What?
We should send out an alert.
We should send out an alert on
We should
that.
send out an alert because parents are buying
Yeah, people are buying things.
PE or clothing.
So they don't have to buy new. No one has to buy, no one is being forced to buy new clothing. Put it that way.
So it's really the shirts.
Yes.
Right, it's the shirts.
So you can wear them. The same, it's the same
You
policy
changed
as
the
last
logo
year.
and
Okay,
said
yeah,
that
we
you
need
were
to do
only
that.
gonna be grandfathered for 1 year with the old logo.
But now they're okay.
Now, if it's says Amsa, you're good.
The final governance committee thing was actually to look at the board meeting calendar for the next year. So this was a meeting calendar that was circulated last meeting, and, again, today, you have them in your calendars. Does anyone have specific conflicts with any of these that are a concern?
Yeah, but I mean, we can work around. That's probably cool.
So in general, these are the fourth Thursday of every month, unless that falls on a holiday or there's no school, in which case it's the third Thursday of the month.
Is the June meeting really late?
The June meeting is, it's the fourth Thursday of the month. So,
Can we get this, what did we determine about posting this?
We gotta approve it, and then we can post it.
this doesn't actually require approval, this is just, we agree that this is what
Well,
it is, right?
yeah,
We all
agreement.
agree that this is what the schedule is, and what we can do is request that this gets posted on the website, so that these dates are all on the website in the future.
I think we were also talking about having this, due to the very busy AMSA calendar, that we could have find a method to have a filtered calendar that would be on the bot page, that would have only bot dates. And I have an action item to work with Lino, with our webmaster, to see if we can do something in that regard.
I thought so, I just couldn't recall.
So this is just for board meetings, and then the individual committees will talk about that through governance.
Yeah.
That hasn't been done yet. All right. Okay, so let's go back to approving the annual report and then the charter application. So the annual report was circulated.
Late.
Late, it was very late, but there's been a lot of other things going on. The annual report is due Friday. If anyone, do we have any questions on what was circulated? It's pretty straightforward, it's pretty factual. It is what it is. We can go ahead and approve that, right? Go ahead and do that. So we have the, so I'd like a motion, requesting a motion to approve the annual report to be submitted.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Can I suggest that the wording be substantially similar, in case there is anything else that we surface in the next day or two?
I motion to approve
The annual report?
annual report.
Or something very much like it?
Or very much, something very much like
Substantially
it.
similar.
So maybe no substantive changes.
Yeah,
With
without.
no substantial changes.
That's the way to do it.
I could second
Chris is gonna second that, okay, vote to approve? Okay, that passes unanimously. The charter, I should say that Craig was very involved in that annual report, and he did actually write that letter, so it is going out under Craig's name. The application for the charter renewal was also circulated. That, there needs to be discussion on that, but also, there needs to be a vote to designate signing authority to me in Craig's absence.
Let's take it one piece at a time.
Just do one piece at a time.
Yeah, right. We
So,
should do that first.
when does that need to be done? That has to be discussed today.
The
Yes.
charter application is due Friday, August 1st, and it is not done electronically.
Or it needs to be mailed.
It needs to be mailed.
So the answer is yes. has
So
to be
the
done
answer is
today.
it has to be discussed today, because we need approval to mail Thursday at the latest. But that too, there are no substantive changes to the charter, we've never talked about, so it's truly a renewal.
Will copies of both of these be on the website after this?
Copies of both of them will be on the website later.
The annual report, definitely.
Yeah, the annual report as soon as it's submitted. The charter application renewal also?
Application is different because it's, I'm not sure, I'll have to find out a date on that. They do not usually do that. That is something, there's an application, then there's a site visit. It's sort of all part of the process. And then in January, we get the renewal.
Well,
So
I see no reason not to post, right?
I would,
Let's-
let me
let's
find
bifurcate.
out.
Why don't we,
Yeah, let's
let's
find out.
let's
Yeah,
find
let's-
out
let's
if,
find out.
from these, on the guidance on that, and,
Let's focus on getting the renewal
Yeah,
in
let's
on
get-
time.
yeah. So let's separate those issues. The first thing we need to do is to designate signatory authority.
I think the first thing we need to do is decide whether we're good with it. No?
We could do that first.
I'm sorry, what do you?
So we have two,
Discussion, all
we
right.
have two
We've got
items for discussion.
over the application, if there are questions about the renewal application itself. Does anyone have any questions?
Maybe they don't, I think what happened is it not on the agenda? Is that what happened, it doesn't say anything about it?
Well,
It's not on our agenda, but it was on the
I think what
draft
happened is I
that
sent
was
out the
circulated.
agenda that Craig sent.
Oh, I
printed the
see.
wrong one.
The
Sure,
printed
so-
agenda, the circulated agenda had it, and the posted agenda on the, for the,
Had
the
it.
towns had it.
Had it,
I think what we have printed
What I
here is
printed
not.
today
Yeah, today is
was
not,
the one Craig sent.
but the one that I'm working off of has that. Okay, if there are no questions, okay, you have no questions, okay. If there are no questions on the charter renewal application, then we need to take two votes. One is to designate signatory authority, and then to vote on the actual.
Well, why don't we do it the other order? Because I think we can, the signature authority can be done more in general, not just limited to this document if we wish to.
No, I think it's limited to this document.
Okay, well, we can discuss that, but I think we suggest that I'd like to make a motion that we approve the, application for charter renewal as a board. Is that the right
Second.
wording?
Yeah, it is.
So you made the, Roger made the motion?
Yes, Chris seconded. So vote to approve? That's unanimous?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Pauline to sign in Craig's absence
For the charter.
for the charter renewal application due this week.
Without substantive alteration. Second.
Okay. Vote on that? That passes unanimously too with my abstention. Okay?
Maybe it's something that, maybe a question for governance is whether we need to have a more general form of this standing approval. So,
I think we should look at that. I think if we look at the job description of the vice chair, I would contend that that description would have authorized you to sign this in Craig's absence.
I think it does.
I think it does, but
Because the
I
vice chair
think,
job description does say that, yeah.
yeah, well, if that person's not here, you're supposed to serve in that role. So I think we were covered, but now we're double covered.
We're double
Yeah.
covered. I don't think that it's necessary just because it's rare that he's out of the country, right? It's just right at
right,
this
but I
time.
mean,
so
just,
it's
just in
a-
general, to have a contingency plan in place, so should we need a signature of the chair on a quick notice that we have a contingency plan in place?
So why
in
doesn't
general?
governance take that
Well,
as
Yeah,
an
governance
agenda
take that.
item
if we can
to
pull it
look
into
at?
governance and come back with a recommendation to the board. It's nice to have the safety nets in place
Yeah.
before you need them.
Before I need them, no, I appreciate that. All right, the final topic today is just agenda requests for the next meeting. We talked about a couple of,
I just had one comment. I've received some feedback from parents on the email that went out about Edline. Is there in the report cards, for the parents that are on vacation, I'm hoping that maybe someone here can tell me, is there a way for them to access the report cards by contacting the school afterwards if they, if they're,
so that I got, yeah,
oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Lisa.
Looking into, problem is that the system's been down, the supplier of the system's been down, we're looking into hopefully getting them to extend our license agreement for a couple more weeks so that the parents can get copies. When the grades were posted in June, we did ask all the parents to please bring a copy of the report card. So we're asking again, just to remind you to print a copy of the report card. But of course, if anyone ever needs a copy, we can bring it forward. No problem.
knows there's a backup plan that parents know that they can reach out and ask for it because.
We're looking into trying to extend it, so we'll send something out.
So the backup plan is that parents can always contact
The school.
the school in order to get the report card at any time, right? Yeah, there's always, that's what, I know, I just did it, so.
So Pauline, just as a point of clarification, you're asking for agenda topics for our August 28th meeting, not our August 12th.
Not for our August 12th meeting.
Which is gonna be a special
Yeah,
purpose, sole agenda item kind of meeting.
The August 12th is going to be a special meeting. I'm asking for agenda, with one agenda topic, which is the interim ED. The August 28th meeting, I'm asking for agenda topics for our next regularly scheduled meeting.
And suggest that we have both a principal recruiting task force and a, if needed, hopefully we won't need it, but a interim ED recruiting task force.
And the third party assessment,
The third-party assessment is done at that point, right?
so task force.
It might also be, a collective bargaining update might be needed or
Collective
wanted.
bargaining update, yep. And we'll also report out on complaints. So that's what we've got. All right.
And, this will be after the first day of school, so we normally get the,
This will be after the first day of school, so we'll normally get a report on how
school opens.
Yeah,
Right.
so that would, yeah, so we could put that on the agenda, school opening report.
It'll be an ED report. Okay. Are there any other agenda requests?
I'd like to make one, before we close, I'd like to take one other comment to recognize all the hard work that Sarah has done to get the large collection of documents prepared for the state. And it's a hard role that goes unnoticed by many people, but I personally recognize all the hard work that she's put into it. So I'd like to thank Sarah for that.
It's true. I mean, every year she has to do the annual report, and this year, on top of that, there was a charter renewal application, which is quite substantial. So we do appreciate your efforts.
Do we think of the August meeting, by then, will we have an idea for a site visit? Sarah?
The site visit is going to be the week of November 3rd through 7th, 3 days in that time. And it will be, we'll be talking about this, I'm not going to put this out on any teacher that I run into. I talk to them about that, but it will be something that was talked about immediately during orientation. Everyone will know so they can plan accordingly.
Okay,
So
so
we
I'll-
can add that to the agenda then? Just
Yeah,
the
an update on that.
update on
As a matter of
charter
fact,
renewal.
I have until August 15th. We now, I'm just gonna wait until all this is done, but there's quite a, long list of documentation needs to be sent to the charter school office before August 15th, so they can prepare for their
For their
site
site
visit.
visit. Okay, and the site visit will be the week of November 3rd to
3rd
7th.
through 7th.
Okay.
It'll be 3 days during that week. They don't, I won't know. I'll start hearing from these. It's a third party. It's not actually the charter school people. It's a third party organization that comes in. It'll be 3 or 4 people, and they'll be here for 3 days.
Okay.
And we will be, there will be teacher focus groups, and there'll be parent focus groups and student focus groups. So we'll be beginning that process right away.
Yeah. All right, I appreciate that. All right. And I would say our meeting is concluded.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. We have no executive session.
Second.
No. All right? Okay. We're all voting
All in
on
favor?
adjourn. All right. Thank you all.
Renee?
8:30.
8:30, 2 hours?